the black Germans that they referred to as Rhineland bastards, round them up. And he was one of the architects of the barbaric medical experiments that the Nazis carried out. So you can see Satan was up to something, beginning with Darwin and moving on to Hitler. And this comes as a surprise to a lot of people that these American eugenics organizations were at the core of this. We'll get in a few minutes to why that's important for our day in which we live. But here's another American eugenicist named Madison Grant. He wrote this book called The Passing of the Great Race. And this book was referred to by none other than Adolf Hitler as my Bible. Adolf Hitler called American eugenicist Madison Grant's book, The Passing of the Great Race, as my Bible, he called it. So you can see the crossover between American eugenicists and the Nazi movement. Of course, there were American eugenicists that routinely praised Adolf Hitler in the media, and they were proud of it. This was not something that was like some secret inner room deals or something. This was, as I said, mainstream. They publicly praised them. Some of them even met with guys like Heinrich Himmler, the chief architect of the Holocaust, was meeting with American eugenicists in the lead up to the Holocaust. This is the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, the center of German eugenics. So under Hitler's Nazi party, they had their own eugenics institute, the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. Now, of course, do you think there were connections between the German one and the three American ones I mentioned? Oh yeah. This was just as Rockefeller funded as the American Eugenics Society was Rockefeller funded. It was Rockefeller money that was endowing the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, the Nazi eugenics organization, those who gave us this great, horrible, wicked scourge of Nazi Holocaust and everything that went on there in Germany, funded by the American eugenicists, by the Rockefellers. You could say this is the German branch of the American Eugenics Society, funded by the Rockefeller Institute. Eugenics in America was not just for, if you will, kind of like the ne'er-do-wells and the people who are just ignorant bigots and fools. And this was not just for, people in KKK robes. This was for people in judicial robes. This was for the mainstream progressive elite of the time. Even people in clergy robes. You'd be shocked to the level to which mainline Protestant denominations and the biggest names in leadership in these denominations in the early 20th century, in the early 1900s, had bought into this ideology of eugenics, this wickedly racist, anti-biblical ideology. Even some of the supposedly cutting-edge health reformers who did an awful lot of good, and these ministers and stuff, I'm sure they did a lot of good too, but when you get a face and a name like this is going to hit a little close to home for some of the viewers of this video. I said health reformers, didn't I? Who's that man pictured center of the fellow eugenicists there? A group of physicians and other specialists who gave their services in examining and scoring participants in the Fitter Families contest. Fitter Families is like survival of the fittest of races. What is John Harvey Kellogg, the health reformer of the late 19th and early 20th century, doing there? Well, the Battle Creek Enquirer recently published an expose on this. This is USA Today, publicly available history. I want to point out a very important proviso before I tell you anything more about John Harvey Kellogg's brush with the eugenics movement. This quote right here. It wasn't until his break from the church in 1907 that he began to truly embrace the ideas. So John Harvey Kellogg had previously been a Bible-believing, present truth advocating, obedient to the Spirit's leading health reformer. And we praise God for the movements of progress that happened in the health fields under his guidance. But you know what happened? If you know the story of John Harvey Kellogg, he began to kick against the goads, and I don't want to receive the guidance of the spirit of prophecy, and eventually broke from the church and then jumped headlong, believe it or not, into the eugenics movement. Now, to his credit, he actually was very, if you will, enlightened and very progressive in a good way in his dealings with various races in his personal life. He and his wife had Haskell Home. They had this orphanage where they brought in many children. And they had adopted these children of various races. He personally did a skin graft with Sojourner Truth. So in a way, like blacks received good treatment from him personally, but as he got steeped in the eugenics movement, the black race received scorn, of course, and contempt, because eugenics holds that Africans are inferior and on up the food chain to his own race being the superior. How John Harvey Kellogg was wrong on race. Battle Creek Enquirer. Here's a photo of the pamphlet that was handed out at the National Conference on Race Betterment, hosted by the Battle Creek Sanitarium leadership, John Harvey Kellogg. The race betterment. Kellogg advocated for a eugenics registry to establish racial thoroughbreds and called for sterilization of those who were defective. People don't realize Battle Creek was an epicenter of the American eugenics movement, said Alexandra Minna-Stern, professor at the University of Michigan and author of Eugenic Nation, Faults and Frontiers of Better Breeding in Modern America. This was a state, speaking of Michigan, where there were a limited number of medical elites like Kellogg, and they held a lot of sway. So he hosted these conferences on race betterment, which Battle Creek became an epicenter of the eugenics movement. This is shameful, right? And this doesn't reflect poorly upon the godly leadership of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, who put John Harvey Kellogg on the map to begin with. He departed from that truth and dove into this satanic ideology when he ditched the church and said, enough with the Spirit's authority in my life. I'm going to be the authority in my life. And so I guess you could say this is a logical, natural consequence and result of saying no to God. When we say no to authority, when we say no to, for example, the 6-day creation in the Bible, if we say no to that and we go, well, maybe Darwinism. Okay, well then that means natural selection, which means survival of the fittest, and nature selects the weak to die off. Well, we can kind of improve upon that. It leads naturally and logically into these ideologies. Kellogg thought he knew better than God, ended up leaving the truth, and ended up being one of the most prominent eugenicists. I had never heard that till I studied it. John Harvey Kellogg, an actual eugenicist.